Last week we learned about Jesus being baptized. He started his ministry, and we learned that we all have a ministry, and that it's not about what others say about us, it's what God says about us, right? Did that help anybody to really know that it doesn't matter what other people call you, it matters what God calls you? Isn't that important to know? Because folks can call you some terrible things, can't they? Yeah, they can really ruin you by calling you some terrible things. And so just know that. Now, today I want to ask the question, how many of you have ever seen somebody else that you wish you had faith like them? You ever seen anybody like that? Or you wish you had their Bible knowledge and their understanding? Yeah, sometimes, it's okay. Really, we should know folks like that we want to aspire to be like. You really should. If you don't know somebody, you need to look around and try to find somebody. Say, you know what? I like to have some faith like that person. But that faith doesn't come by accident or coincidence. It actually comes by divine providence. In fact, it's sort of like with your children. There's certain things you won't teach them until they're old enough to handle it. Would you agree? I mean, you wouldn't put your preschooler in, I have to change that because they're trying to do that in school, aren't they? Teaching them about sex education and stuff in first, second, and third grade. You really shouldn't do that, should you? Because they're not ready to handle that. How many of you would let your third grader drive your car? Anybody? Yeah, because they're not ready for it, right? But when they're ready, and I don't know if we're ever ready for them to drive, but when they're ready, we have to sort of let them launch out there. So this is where we sort of find the disciples in our lesson text today. Turn to chapter 24. And this is just, I tell you, I just marvel at God and how he just gives me great preaching stuff, because I couldn't have made it rain. I couldn't have put us in a storm. But that's where we're going to end up in our lesson today. And I was going like, wow, God, you're just so powerful. Yeah. So open up. I think that's on page 335. Turn to page 335. And can I just teach a little bit today? This is just such a deep one. Because it's one, some of us might have heard this story before. Some of us may have never heard it. And so I just want to spend a little time just looking at this lesson right here. And when you turn to page 324, it's really talking about Jesus being no ordinary man. And it starts out with his being in a boat and teaching his disciple. And the writer sort of walks through that. And he starts telling us about Jesus had to start preaching in parables, because what happened was that in Jesus' early ministry, he started talking about, remember last week, the kingdom of God is at hand, repent. And he started preaching, and he started having people baptized. And then he started healing folks, those who were sick, those who were lame, those who were blind, those who were deaf. They could hear. And he did a miraculous thing. He took 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread and fed a multitude of people. And so when we get to chapter 24 here, a lot of that has taken place. And then it says right at the very top there, what does it say? Jesus began to teach by the lake. Now, right there in this passage here, he taught them the parable of the sower of the seed. And really, this is an awesome piece just really to start, because each of us falls somewhere in this right here. Now, Jesus used parables. Does anybody know what a parable is? A parable is a short story of a daily practice, something that you're very familiar with, to something that is known to you, to help you learn something that is unknown to you, some divine principle, some divine promise, some divine precept. How can I say it? He uses things that you don't know to teach you things that you need to know. That's what a parable is. He uses things that you do know to teach you things that you don't know. So that's what a parable is. And he gave this parable, and he would use life examples of things that they were familiar with. Now, some of you all, where does bread come from? Food Lion? Kroger's? Harris Teeter? Publix? Is that where it comes from? Look at you looking like, oh. But in this society, it's an agrarian society, and they knew farming very well. And so, but most of y'all got any live plants at your house? Okay. How about goldfish? Got any fish or anything? Okay, no fish. Any kind of plant? Any? No live plants? Just a few folks got live? This is wow. Okay. Let me ask you, how many of you got grass in your front yard? Okay. Any of y'all seen grass seeds before? How did that grass get there? I'm talking about fescue 32 or something. I'm not talking about that other kind that's legalized out of California. I saw y'all raise your hand and say, yeah, I got some of that. Yeah, I saw y'all had that different kind of look like, Pastor, yeah, it's cool. Yeah. I got to watch y'all. Y'all a rough crowd here. All right, so how many of y'all are planting grass? It's okay, Brother Covington. Yeah. He like. His hand, the only one went up. Okay, so if I started talking to you about planting some grass so you could have this beautiful lawn in the spring, most of you all would understand what that process is like, right? Even if you have a lawn care person, they come out, you see them with their little machine, and the seeds are just flying everywhere, right? They're just going all over the place. Have you seen that happen? Yeah, I mean, they just fly all over the place. Well, here's the thing there now. This parable that you see right there is talking about the parable of the sower and the seed. And he really talks about four kind of people that are there. And so what I want to talk about is the parables before the storm. Let's talk about the parables before the storm. Now, I want you to find yourself in this group because you're one of these four. And I want you to pick one now, and then you might want to adjust it at the end. All right. So now the first one he talks about is that falls on smooth ground, and the birds eat it before it ever takes up root. I call that a surface hearer. Now, what Jesus is telling us here now, he wants to know that you hear. He wants you to understand what you hear, and he's also talking about how you hear. And right now, this is talking about how you hear. Now, let me describe a surface listener, and you don't have to raise your hand on this one, okay? Just listen to this one. Have you ever heard people who have been to church and they had a real great time? You can raise your hand on that. You ever heard folks that, yeah, it doesn't have to be here, just anywhere. They just, oh, man, we had a great time at church yesterday. Then you ask them, well, what was the message about? Say, I don't know, but we had a good time. Now, sometimes it's the preacher's fault that you don't know. Yeah, right? Sometimes it's your fault because you were a surface listener. You heard it, but it fell on such a smooth ground that before you even got to the parking lot, the birds took it and were gone. Now, how do you know if it's gone before the parking lot? Because if you get out that door and somebody bumps you the wrong way, and your hair start to go like that, you might be a surface listener. Are you with me that far? That's a surface listener. Okay, now then the next one I think he talks about is a rocky listener. Now, the rocky person is one, if you got some grass and you throw some seed down and some of it lands on a rock, it'll start growing for a while. But when it gets really hot, it's going to wither. All right, and what he's saying there, that a rocky listener is one, oh yeah, they had a good time, and they can remember a couple of messages, but then when somebody challenges their faith, they just wither. They don't have enough confidence because they don't have enough root to hold on to what they have heard. Are you with me that far? So some of us are rocky listeners. Then the next listener he talks about is a thorny listener. Now the thorny listener, now they hang in there for a while. But then, just like with weeds, things start choking it out, called life. Y'all ever do life? Life just starts coming at you. You ever heard folks say, Pastor, I'm going to come back to church when I get myself together? You ever hear folks talking like that? That's a person who's a thorny listener because they believe that they can undo their life circumstances and then come back when they get better. But here's my thing. If you can get right without the church, you don't need to go. But the truth of the matter, you can't. All right. But they think they can. And so that's a thorny listener because life starts coming in. It might be something happening at the job. Marriage might be messed up. Kids might be going crazy. You just might just not like somebody here that doesn't like you. Somebody said something wrong to you, and you just not going. You ever, I told you, raise your hand on this one. Now the last kind of listener is a rooted listener. Now, that's who some of you all are because y'all got up in the rain. Now, let me just tell you now, a rain at our house, for some folks in our house, is a sedative. I mean, it's some folks in our house can just sleep out. Yeah, rain, it's like we could be in the middle of something. And they won't wait. Somebody won't wake up until it stopped raining. So we got about 2 days to go, you know. But okay, I'm good. Now. So are you with me that far? So walk with me now. So then Jesus now, he's saying that most folks are that kind of listener. So through the next several pages, Jesus starts teaching using parables. He did some deep teaching. Turn to page 336. He talked about, he tells them about the parables, like I just broke it down, what kind of listener people are. And then he starts talking about on page 337, he talks about lost people and how much trouble God will go through to find them. He talks about the lost corn and the lost sheep and then the lost son. And then as you roll on over to page 338, he's talking about the father who had the son who had gone away and wasted all he had on lascivious living. I mean, just living it up, just having a party. Hey. Don't do it, Doug. Don't do it. Doug was getting ready to tune up. Don't tune up on me, Doug. But we got to keep going. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. And so now as you get on to page 349, now you're supposed to have read this, so that's why I'm just skipping through some of this. He gives us the Beatitudes, and page 341, he gives us the Lord's Prayer, and then page 342, he talks about the two masters and the two houses, and he gives us all of these things. Now, here's the thing. Every word that Jesus spoke, here's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to hit your head, then your heart, then it's supposed to impact your hands and your feet. When you start hearing it, what he's given us is words that end up in the Bible. So let me give you some life advice about the Bible. Don't treat the Bible like an ordinary book. Okay, that's what he's saying about when you hear the words that are in the Bible and when it's being taught to you, don't treat it like an ordinary book. All right, it's not one. How can I talk about it? How many of you believe that God is sovereign, that he knows everything, that he's all that? All right, so now if he's sovereign and that's his book, there ought to be a connection there with how we ought to treat what we hear in this book. And so sometimes we have difficulty because life can sort of make us want to bend the book toward our behavior instead of our bending ourselves to the book's behavior. Are y'all walking with me here? I just want to teach just a little bit. All right. And so never treat the Bible like an ordinary book. Now drop down to me on page 343. This is where we want to spend the next 2 hours. All right? Yes, indeed. Now, here he is now. Just drop about a third of the way down when it says, that day when evening came. Now, if you don't have a book, that's in Mark, the 4th chapter, and we're going to start, I think it's about the 35th verse is where that is. Now, it says, that day when evening came, he said to his disciples, let us go over to the other side. He says, leaving now the crowd behind. Isn't that what he did? They took him with him. They took him along. I think it's what it says. They took him along. Isn't that what it says? And just as he was in the boat. Now, that's a powerful little statement, but we won't have time to stay there. And then look what it says. And there were also some other boats with him. Now, watch this now. It says a furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, and so that it was nearly swamped. Now, check out what happens next. This is what just blew my mind now. Now, just remember all of that. It says Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. Disciples woke him up and said to him, teacher, don't you care if we drown? Let's just stop there for a little bit because I want to talk about the problem in the storm. Do y'all see the problem in the storm? Check this out now. Jesus had been preaching and teaching all day long. And here we see that Jesus is just as human as you and I. How many of y'all remember Hugo? Yeah. Was that not a vicious storm? That some of y'all ain't old enough. That was back in 80. You know, next year that'd be 20 years ago or 30 years ago. 30 years ago. Wow. Yeah, that's been about 30 years ago next year. Well, yeah, so that was 29 years ago. Now, can I talk plain? Can I tell y'all some secrets? I wasn't walking with the Lord then in 89. I mean, I was going to church and stuff. I mean, y'all. Anybody feel me here? Okay. And so, but I had what day did that come on? A Monday? Does anybody remember? I think a Monday or Tuesday. But anyway, whatever day it came, the day before, I had a good day. I had just wore myself completely out. I slept through Hugo. Yeah. Till my daughter came in and woke me up. Her bed had moved across the room. Yeah, it had. And trees were falling, boom, boom, boom. So when you first read something like this, it says here now, look what it says. It says that a furious squall came up and the waves poured into the boat. Now here's Jesus. He says he was at the stern, and in a boat that would have been at the very back, and they would have had this little cushion, and that was where dignitaries would sleep. But check this out now. I think if something was throwing water on me all night long, I would probably wake up, wouldn't you? I mean, he had to just be slapped, wore out from working with people and dealing with us. Dealing with folks. Look at the text. It said that he didn't even make any preparation. When it says that he went just as he was, that means he was just exhausted. He didn't make any preparations. He's going to the other side, to another city, and he'd been teaching all day, and here he is sleeping in the boat. So what's the problem here now? While he's sleeping in the boat, you got fishermen that they knew this water. They were comfortable going across this all the time. This is their job. How many of you know your job? Come on, just raise it. You know your job, right? So they're fishermen. This wasn't anything new for them. And so they're bailing water out of the boat, Now, you know it's dangerous when there's more water in the boat, right? Then you can bail out. When it's coming in faster than you can get out, you start doing some math, don't you? You say, if we don't hurry up, we gonna drown. Right? Because swimming wasn't, the lake is about 8 miles wide, all right? And so to swim 8 miles in a storm, they weren't ready for that. And so here now, as they're bailing water out, here's the problem. They said, teacher. Y'all didn't catch it. See, they said, teacher. Look what it said. Don't you care if we drown? There's a problem here. Does anybody see the problem here? There's several problems. One, they just called him teacher. Didn't I say he had already caused blind people to see and deaf to hear and the lame to walk? Are y'all walking with me here? Has God done something miraculous in your life and you still call him teacher? That's a problem there. But I wish that was the only problem. Now look at it. He says, don't you care? Have you ever had situations in your life that you just feel that God just doesn't care about you? Yeah, let's just tell the truth. Just sometimes we won't say it to everybody, but we might say it to a few people. If you're in a life situation, you just don't feel like God loves you or that he cares about you because you've been praying to him. You know they had been calling out, and they probably say, Jesus, wake up, Jesus, wake up. And he wasn't even hearing them. Sometimes it's like that. We don't think God hears us, and we're dealing with our own life situation, and here he is, asleep on the job. These are fishermen calling on this man who had changed water to wine and took 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And then they said, teacher, wake up. Don't you care if we drown? Are y'all walking with me here? Now, what's the problem? Do y'all really see the problem? And this is the problem in most of our life. How many of you say you want faith like other folks got some great faith? How many of you say you want some great faith? All right, now watch how you get this. Now watch this now. Watch this. You missed it. I know you missed it. Go back up here to the very first verse that I read. That day when evening came. You see that? He said to his disciples, let us go to the other side. Oh, you missed it again. He said, let us go to the other side. So in other words, if God tells you you're going somewhere, regardless of what may start coming up against you, you got to know if he says that you are going to the other side, why are they going to wake him up when he's already assured them? He said, let us. He didn't say, let me. In other words, he didn't exclude them. He said, let us. We got to understand sometimes when we're going through some things, sometimes God puts us there so he can teach us some things. See, sometimes he's got to take us through something, even if we're going to get to the other side. See, we always want everything to be a bed of roses, and you say, I love the Lord, and I do what he says do. But sometimes he's going to bring up some storms in your life. Sometimes you're going to have some stuff that you got to go through. Sometimes it's not going to always be easy when you're trying to get to the other side. But if he tells you, let us go, hey, somebody ought to be able to shout, because he says, let us go to the other side. I got to hurry up because they're going to cut the clock off on me. Do y'all see that? See, a lot of times we run right past that. And can I just talk plain a little bit farther too? Because sometimes we get so caught up in the physical miracle because we say, well, Pastor, that was way back then. But sometimes we got to look at that with our spiritual eyes. Some of you are in a storm right now. Some of you are going through something right now. Some of you are being tossed to and fro right now. Some of you don't know how you're going to make it from one side to the other. But here's my word to you. If God has told you, let us go to the other side, don't wake him up. You just go ahead on and praise him for what he's going to do. In fact, our God never slumbers or sleep. He knows what you're going through. He knows what you stand in need of. So let me give you some life advice here. Our greatest problem is not around us, it's within us. Listen to what I said now. Our greatest problem isn't around us, it's what's in us. Should I say what's not in us? You see, where your faith is challenged, and you let the cares of the world, you let a storm come up around you, and you forget about the one who says we're going to make it to the other side, then the problem isn't the storm. The problem is your relationship with God in the storm. Yeah. I'm going to have to stop. I'm not finished, but I'm going to have to stop. Can I go just a little bit farther? Can y'all walk with me just a little bit longer? All right, watch this now. Watch this. He got up. Look what the text says. He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, quiet, be still. The wind died down, and it became completely calm. Now, watch this. It says he got up. So I told you he showed that he was completely human. He was tired. They woke him up. But then he showed that he was completely God. He told the storm, let me go outside right now and tell it to stop raining. What you think's going to happen? It's going to keep raining. Because I don't have the power that God has. But here's a man who's got the same power as the creator, the one who caused the darkness to separate from day and the night. And then he caused the moon and the stars to hang in the air. And he can even tell demons, be quiet. That's the same word he used in Mark 1 when he told the demon to shut up. In other words, he put a muzzle. It's just like putting a muzzle on an animal. He just said, shut up. What kind of God is that? That's the perplexity now. Let's look at the perplexity in the storm. They had called him teacher. That's why I said that was the problem. They had called him teacher. They had only seen what they call natural miracles, but no nature miracles. They saw him cause the blind to see. That they figured that was possible. They saw him turn water into wine. They said that's no big deal. They saw him raise the dead. They saw him take 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. But who can tell the stars and the moon what to do? Who can tell the rain what to do and it obey? He told it to be quiet. God can speak the same word. Are you looking at this now? He can speak the same word into your situation. You just got to believe that he can say the same in the storm in your life. He can put a muzzle on what's happening if you just hold on to God's unchanging. The perplexity in the storm. They were terrified and asked him, who is this? Every now and then. You just got to check yourself. See, when you really only treat Jesus like a man and he does something like that in your life, you sometimes wonder, who is this? But the text lets us know that he's God in the flesh. You know, sometimes we talk about our grandmama's face and granddaddy's face, but you know when you learn the more about Jesus in your life is when you're in your storms, not from other people's storms. Sometimes he just has to take you through a storm. Has he taken anybody in here other than me through a storm? Does anybody in here know how God can deliver you? Has he delivered anybody out of a storm? Then you can get up and say that I don't have to tell you about my grandmama's face. I don't have to tell you about my granddaddy's face. I don't have to tell you about my mama's face. I don't have to tell you about my daddy's face. But I can tell you what he has done for me. I can tell you how he has made a way out of no way. I can tell you when I didn't know how my ends were going to meet that he was a way maker. I can tell you that he's a miracle worker. I can tell you who he is. How do I know? Mary's baby, the lily of the valley, the bright, hey. Ha. Ha. Sometimes you got to know he's real. I stopped playing church a long time ago. I stopped coming in here just to try to impress her. Why? Because he did something for me one day. He picked me up and he turned me around. He placed my feet on solid ground. Yeah. I know I got to go, so let me go ahead and give you your bottom line. If you don't remember anything else, please remember this. Jesus may not always take you out of the storm, but he will always take you through it. Oh, you didn't hear what I just said. A lot of times we pray too much for God to take us out of stuff. That's why he says rejoice in all things. He didn't say rejoice because of all things. You don't need to rejoice because you're sick. You don't need to rejoice because you're unemployed. You don't need to rejoice because your marriage isn't working. You don't need to rejoice because your kids are going crazy. But no, you need to rejoice because who's in it with you. And when you know who's in it with you, he says rejoice always. And so what he's saying is that he may not take you out of the storm, but he will take you through it. He will take you through it. Why? Because he's not an ordinary man. He's not an ordinary man. When they ask, who is this? Someone's going to ask you that. You need to be able to tell him who he is. He's more than a teacher. He is God in the flesh. And regardless of what you may be going through in your life, that's why I just want to thank you all for making it out through the storm. That he can take you through it or out of it. But either way, if he tells you, let us go to the other side, then you walk with him. You hold on to God's unchanging hand, knowing he's going to take you to the other side. If you would stand on your feet with me.